listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another show lined up for y'all. Today, man, we're going to be talking to a special guest. She has an amazing book that you can check out on Amazon, anywhere you can find a book. Is Building the Business of You, a System to Align Passion and Growth Potential Through Your Own Career Mashup. So first and foremost, we're going to talk to Connie Steele. She's all about the future of work and life, and she's an author, podcaster, executive consultant, and she is a business and career strategist, a brand product marketer, and she's also a speaker. She has a lot of things that she does with her community and her platform. I want to welcome Connie to the show and say, how you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show.
I know you're busy, so I appreciate you taking time to talk to us today. So first and foremost, before we dive into your book, Building the Business of You, kind of share the audience more about your career.
Sure. Well, I didn't start off thinking I was going to be doing any of the things that I'm doing now. And that's probably going to be the case for a lot of your listeners and probably you too. I mean, we all kind of go through this non-linear career path, even though I think most people assume we should be on a very linear career path to get to where we want. So prior to doing this, about 10 years ago, I actually made a pivot out of corporate. I had been working in the corporate world, primarily in the tech industry as a marketing and strategy executive. Actually started off early on in my career in marketing research and actually had a very quantitative background, but I'm quite right brain, not just left brain, and wanted to find a way to kind of blend the both of those things. So again, pursued that path in marketing, worked in different areas, in particular brand and doing product marketing and research and so forth. But, when I had pursued that, a goal of being the head of marketing of a company, that essentially a CMO, I thought that's what I wanted. I thought that reaching that top level and being part of a management team was success for me. And I realized in that situation, in the organization I was in, it wasn't a fit. It actually was a very challenging and toxic environment. I think so many people probably have dealt with that. And I realized, wait a second, to be the person I wanted to be the mom I wanted to be, to be the friend that I wanted to be and really realize my whole potential, this continued path wasn't it. So I pivoted out of it to try to figure out, well, what is it that I want to do? And so I pursued independent consulting, which, is a pretty big thing now, but it really wasn't that case at the time. And so it was all really to ensure that I could still learn, grow, develop, try, and have that breadth of experience. And that eventually led me to where I am now. So like you, I have a podcast and I started that about 6.5 years ago. And it's through these amazing interviews with people that how careers were fundamentally changing, that people were pursuing nonlinear paths and trying to parallel path their way to kind of realizing their whole selves. And I didn't see anybody necessarily writing about that. They were talking about, the future of work from a very tech-oriented perspective, but not one that's about people, how people were just fundamentally changing in terms of what they want, what they needed, and how they're redefining success. So all of that, really because of just interviewing people, seeing what was happening, got me obsessed. And I decided to dive more and more and more. That became a thesis. And then eventually that led me to writing the book that you talked about.
And with your business consulting, I mean, like I said in the intro, you do a lot of many things, but in particular for consulting services, kind of share with the audience the difference between how you are helping organizations and how you help individuals.
So for organizations, it's very much about enabling them to drive greater workforce engagement and development by really understanding what do their workers want. It's different. I think that the more you can understand them as people, their needs, whether it's the professional and personal needs, because they're totally intertwined, the more effective you're going to be at creating the right programs, policies, and products that align to what they need to have. So also that could be in the form of workshops to better understand, the different groups that are in your organization, like to alleviate that kind of challenge and conflict, because many times there just isn't that clarity of goals and alignment, or even mission, vision, values, right? Understanding what does your organization truly stand for. So from a brand perspective, and that's what I've done a lot in my career, is how do you define that brand story that really reflects what you're about? For individuals, it is supporting them specifically on helping them define what that career strategy is going to be like for them. So many people are going through these different transitions in their life right now and trying to determine, well, what's that next right path for me? And it's really hard to do that kind of strategic planning for yourself. So having somebody guide you along that path is one way, but the other is the importance of building your own brand. So we're now in a world where we have to look at ourselves as products or services on the web, whether we like it or not. You can think of LinkedIn, right, as this big Amazon for people. So, the clearer you are about what you stand for, the value you bring, why you're different, the more beneficial it is for you going forward to help you craft that path that you want.
Listen on Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest, Connie Steele. You can go visit her website, conniewsteele.com, and get the book that we're about to dive into. It's called Building the Business of You, a system to align passion and growth potential through your own career mashup. So with that being said, those who are maybe not aware of the opportunity to actually build their career, let's talk about this book. What inspired you to write this blueprint for everyone?
As I said before, it was really driven by my interviews on my own podcast, because it was the stories of these people where they had shared, their sort of windy career journey and how they got unstuck from, the areas they were in. And it was really fascinating because I was starting to see this ongoing pattern of how they took control and actually started doing strategic planning for themselves and defining what it is that they wanted. But, it wasn't something that they had, specifically planned. But it was really through these discussions and then this desire actually to understand what was happening to those that were developing and growing in their career. So specifically, generationally, when you look at those who are in their 20s and 30s, it just, the approach to work is just different. And I wanted to understand why. Because when I took a step back and saw that, what is the workforce composition going to be made up of? It's fundamentally changing, and you're going to have a huge shift in mindset and approach that's going to really impact the entire workforce. And so, I was super curious. Again, I started off my career marketing research and I want to understand that. And so it was through additional focus groups and just discussions with people and just seeing what they're looking for that I realized, wow, you know what? They're looking for breadth, not just depth. They're looking to express their individuality. They are looking at a world where it's about an and situation, not an or. When I was looking at other career-oriented paths, or I should say sort of content, and also just sort of what that future work looked like, people weren't talking about future work from just a people point of view, right? Like, about future work, people are the ones who drive businesses at the end of the day. So I thought it was really important to be a voice for so many people who felt that they were almost treated very differently because they didn't have that very linear, scripted path. They were going left, they were going right, they were talent stacking, they were building all these interesting and different skills. Because you know what? They saw a connection. They saw the opportunity to really bring together these different interests that made them whole. And so it was a desire to really be, again, that voice for a group where I saw that eventually being more and more the norm. And what's so interesting now, if you look in the media, you see so many people talking about side hustles. You see so many people writing about, these parallel paths and a portfolio career. That wasn't that common when I was kind of summarizing this a while ago, but it's being more and more embraced today.
And you start out in chapter 1, be your own CEO because you have to. I know you can't spill all the beans in the sauce in the chapter, but what's the focal point of what you try to bring across for the reader?
Well, I think in today's new world of work, if you don't look at yourself as a business, if you don't look at yourself as a brand, if you don't look at yourself, again, as this product and service on the web, somebody else is going to define you, whether you like it or not. As you know, right? Social plays a big part into how people learn about you, how they see you in the world. So for you, it's so important to take stock of defining who you are, whatever that looks like, whether you are going to work for a company or whether you're going to choose an entrepreneurial path. But you have to really define who you want to be now, because if you don't, somebody else will. And so that's really a big part of it. That chapter is just explaining the reasons why so many things are constantly shifting and changing and being redefined as we speak. So the way you can feel grounded and take control over what that perception, that narrative is going to be, then it really comes down to you defining who you are as, again, like a business.
And you also talk about creating your compass. So kind of dive into that and some of the takeaways from that chapter in chapter 4.
Absolutely. Well, so what's really key, as I mentioned before, is that to build that business of you, you have to do that by doing strategic planning for yourself, just like companies do for their business. And this is a 5-part system, which starts off with the first one, which is spying the trends. And that is really about understanding who you are, but also understanding what those trends are of the areas that you want to pursue so that you can align all that. But creating your compass is really defining that actual plan. What are those goals that you want to set for yourself? What are the ways to get there, those strategies? What are the goals? What are the objectives? Excuse me. What are those strategies and what are those tactics? And so it's not something that we do for ourselves. A lot of times we just say, hey, you know what? We have this job. And then if we're not happy, we just go to another job. But if you take a step back and say, well, what do I really want in my life? And what do I want out of work? And how do those two work in concert? When you can actually define that and say, okay, here's my goal. I want more flexibility, for example, in my life. So does that mean you maybe stay in the same company you're in? Or maybe does that mean you pursue something different? Or does that maybe mean something else? But once you get clarity on that, you can then say, all right, if I want this, then what are the steps I need to take in order to achieve that goal? And what it's doing is forcing you to map out all those steps. And it's forcing you to put some timelines around it so that you can hold yourself accountable and ensure that you are moving yourself forward versus living in your head and saying, yeah, I'm going to go do this and do that. But nothing ever materializes because you don't force yourself to document the way you're going to get there.
And speaking of getting inside your own head, you also explored the idea of what's the difference between emotional versus rational career blockers. So for our audience, what some of the common career blockers that you kind of unravel in the book?
Oh, those emotional blockers all the time that tend to happen. I think those are the blockers that prevent us from moving forward. Am I going to fail? Am I going to be seen as somebody who is crazy? Am I going to be seen as somebody who, am I going to shame my family, for example? I mean, there's so many things that we are so fearful of. And that is a fear of shame. We have anxiety. We have failure. What will others think of me if I do that? Will I look successful or not? Those emotional elements, those emotional blockers are what really do get in our way versus things that are just much more rational, like, can I do it or can I not do it? So the key thing is getting a hold of and get control over, are these things that are holding you back purely your own anxiety? Or is it something that's actually real? And so you kind of have to go through documenting all that stuff and defining, all right, what is truly the drivers that are happening and where are they coming from first and foremost? Because a lot of times something in our past is what's keeping us from truly moving forward. So much of this work is really about getting to know you, right? And what makes you thrive and what holds you back. So that's some of that.
You listen on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest, Connie Steele. Go visit our website, ConnieWSteele.com. And man, also in the book, you talk about building our, hard and soft skills. And for the audience, what's hard skills and what are soft skills, and how can they both work together for the individual?
Right. Well, I think for so many people now, and maybe some of your listeners have seen this, but hard skills are what we typically gravitate towards in terms of what we think we need in order to be prepared for that next career. But it isn't always just the hard skills, because honestly, anyone can learn a lot of those now because of the availability of tools on the web. Really, it's the soft skills, meaning your communication, your networking skills, in particular, your emotional intelligence skills. And that means reading people. So one of the key things that, I really noticed, I think we've seen this too, is that because of the pandemic, people haven't been able to exercise those social skills as much as they typically have in the past. And in order to really connect with people and get folks to be a part of your village and help you move forward in the way that you want, you need those. You need to be able to connect with people and you need to read people. So with emotional intelligence in particular, which I talk about in the book, making sure that you can have that awareness of people around you and understand how they're thinking and how they're feeling and reacting accordingly, but also have that awareness and of yourself. So there's that personal awareness and that competence that you have of just the way that you behave. But in the group setting, there's that social awareness and that social competence that you need to have. So all those things work together to make sure that, when you are engaging with people, whether that is virtually or whether that is in person, you just know how to read the room. You just know how to read the dynamics, right? Because the better you are at connecting and reading people and navigating those people dynamics, actually, the more effective you're going to be in being able to achieve what it is that you want. Because let's face it, you don't really get anything done in life without relying on other people. And you need to have that relevant village to help you get there. So you can build all these skills that you want, but you will still absolutely need the people that will support you along the way.
And those listening right now, if they want to get this book, they can go to Amazon anywhere you can get a book and go find Building the Business of You, a system to align passion and growth potential through your own career mashup. You have a track record of doing a lot of great work. Your platform, I said in the green room, it's impressive. Your press media page is impressive, but you have a lot of material for people. You also have a ton of research, and there's one on the state of work and career success 2023, where people can either download it or they can kind of go through it. How important is it for people to understand some of the stats that are out there from your research, and how that can also drive them in the direction to go to the next level in their professional world?
Well, I think the reason why I did the research in the first place, I think it's important to share, is that I really wanted to provide a foundation for folks to understand what does it take to be successful? Because you know how so many of us probably go through life like, hey, you know, what should I do? What should I do to move to that next level, or whatever it is I want to achieve? So I want to provide some clarity in that. And the key thing coming out of it is that it shares the most important thing, the most important sort of mover, driver of career success is dimension of planning. And that planning is building that strategic plan, defining what your goals are and a path to get there, as well as the people that you need, that village. So whether it's a mentor, sponsor, a broader network, it's the people and that plan collectively that will guide you along the way. And so, you know, I think that's the reason why I did this, because I wanted to kind of find or decode, I guess, a way that people would say, hey, you know, if I had to work on something, what is it that I need to first work on? Know what you want. I know that seems so simple and it seems so obvious, but it's actually hard because there's so many different things that come into play. Just like you asked earlier, you know, what causes me to not do certain things, and what causes me to not sort of to block those opportunities to move forward. It's like, well, you know, because maybe you never did it before. Maybe that you're afraid that, you know, again, you're going to fail, or, you know, there's going to be shame and so forth. But so much of this is helping you understand that you're not alone, that a lot of other people don't feel fully successful right now. And it's to provide some grounding on what to do specifically going forward.
Based on your own experience and the work you've done with your brand, your platform, do you find people who don't choose and make a decision of what they want, that there could be some kind of something in the past that's keeping them from making a clearer decision? Or what do you think causes a person to be stuck and to not be decisive?
I think a lot of that comes down to not having the level of awareness and introspection about yourself, and being honest with who you are and the things that hold you back. Because, you know, look, none of us are perfect, right? And there are experiences that we've had in our past lives that shape who we are now. And until you can connect what those experiences or people or certain roles that you've had that have had potentially a impact on your ability to move forward, and you connect the dots as to why, that's a lot of times why you get stuck. So maybe there was something way back when that you had done, and you put your heart and soul into it, and you felt you failed. That carries through in your ability to push past that fear of failing again, or you're worrying about being judged and having all that pressure because of that situation. And so that situation was a triggering event for you, and you don't even realize it. So until you reconcile, like, wait a second, here's the good came out of it. I learned this, and this is why I don't want to pursue certain things anymore, but I've learned X, Y, and Z. So that caused me to pivot, and it's a learning opportunity versus something that's seen as a failure. I think everything that you do has to be seen as something that you learn from, versus really penalizing yourself and saying, oh, you know what, I'm terrible at this, and therefore not even going to entertain this new thing that I want to try. So many times it's just our own personal blockers, as I had talked about before, you had asked me about, that we just haven't really connected dots on, that inhibits us from being able to take that risk, if they see it as a risk, and build the confidence towards pushing past that barrier.
This on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest, Connie Steele. And yeah, what I like about the cover of the book, Building the Business of You, the word you is in all caps, but within the word you, there's all these other words. So editor, advisor, writer, speaker, scientist, chef, coach, singer, and so forth. Now,
yeah.
I think that's a key to this whole conversation we've been talking about. Kind of share the audience why you chose to have that word you designed that way on the front cover.
Because the future of work and careers is that mashup. And so the reason why I use that term career mashup is because none of us are one-dimensional in any way, right? And even though I think societally we've been all forced to choose that like one definition of who we are, that's not really who we are, right? You probably have multiple identities that you want to express, not just one thing. And I think people now are ready to showcase all of that because that's really who they are. We are very multidimensional in nature. I mean, for me, I am not just, an author and a consultant, is all the things you said, but I'm also a mom too. I actually happen to be a martial artist. I happen to be Chinese American. There's so many different things in my own identity that make me me. And when you start to embrace that more, and you also start to understand how all those different facets of you make you you and give you sort of an amazing sort of power or superpower, like that's where you start to realize you can be your authentic self. And that's why I did it that way, is that you are not one thing. You're multiple things. I think this is also where that future is moving towards, is that you have so many people who are pursuing lots of different things in their lives because it's really interesting and it fulfills them in a different way. And I think it's time to celebrate and embrace that.
Man, you said something there. I think, man, that's pretty good because I'm a visual person because I'm a creative. So every time people speak, I say every now and then, it's like a movie is playing in my head. And when you said that, I was thinking of a person who maybe is pursuing all these things, but they never pursue themselves. Like they don't look inward and say, okay, what do, I do well at, versus on the outside be other influences that can probably influence you to pursue something because you're trying to be safe or you're trying to please somebody or whatever the case may be. This career is more safe than that career or whatever the case may be. But I think that is perfectly well said what you just said there. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I know people listen to this, they can also listen to your podcast, Strategic Momentum Podcast. Can you share a little bit of the core mission that you have for your audience on that platform?
Sure. Really the podcast started because I wanted to be able to share stories of entrepreneurs, creators, leaders, thought leaders, executives on what got them stuck, but more importantly, how they were able to move forward and find their fit. Because everyone is trying to find that path that really showcases all of their skills and talents. And, we talk about different topics, certainly focused more, particularly this season, on those who are experts in the future of work. But I think what's important on the show is that I want to be able to showcase that backstory of the person that we have and connect that to why the work they did in the past and in the present is relevant to what they're passionate about now. and the advice that they provide for people as a result of that. So it is trying to kind of connect all those dots such that you can really see this very multidimensional person who has a lot of value to add. So it's really all about helping people find that meaningful fit as a result of listening to interesting stories of other people who have taken that interesting journey to find theirs.
Once again, this is I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Connie Steele. You can go to her website, ConnieWSteele.com, and also get the book, Building the Business of You, a system to align passion and growth potential through your own career mashup. You can get that on Amazon, anywhere you can buy a book, and also check out her podcast, Strategic Momentum Podcast, at her website, ConnieWSteele.com. I want to say thank you again, Connie, taking time talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful time.